In anime, there are certain shonen tropes that serve to bring out the best in a series. And while there are many arcs to choose from, like war arcs or rescue arcs, one arc stands above the others, the tournament arc. Some of the best arcs in anime history are tournament arcs. Battle City, Heaven's Arena, and the Chunin Exams. These arcs are some of the most beloved in anime for a reason. But the question is, what makes the tournament arc the best shonen trope? One thing that all tournament arcs have are insane fights. We really get to see the manga jump in their duffy when they're making these arcs. Since tournament arcs are pretty much just fighting arcs, the manga always knows that they have to really bring their best stuff when we're talking about the fights. And let me tell you, when these guys get in their bag, they really get in their bag. We obviously all know about Rock Lee versus Gaara. We know how it basically changed the brain chemistry of kids all around the world. But honestly, it's more than that. Like, even Naruto versus Neji, for instance, was an insane fight. I've gone back and looked at it. Neji versus Hinata, that was literally hands personified. It's not just Naruto. Like, even looking at Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, I know what you're about to say. Oh, they don't box in Yu-Gi-Oh! But I ain't gonna lie to you, Yugi versus Kaiba, that was insane. You know, throwing out their ace monsters and using the god cards. I'm not gonna lie to you, that's hands. It has to be hands. Or we can talk about Hisoka versus Castro, which, when you look at it, Hunter x Hunter, set the stage and the standard for what a fight between top tiers will look like. Take your pick on the arc. All tournament arcs have insane fights. And let's call a spade a spade. An elite fight can and will put an arc and ultimately a series in the spotlight. But staying on the theme of fights, tournament arcs provide a lot of great insight on the overall power system. Given how most tournament arcs are either done early in the series or before the power system really takes off, we are usually gifted with a great oversight on how the power system really works. We get to see what kind of different variations there are, we see the different cases, and sometimes we get to see the potential peak of what the power system can really be. This is how Nen works, this is how Chakra works. Like, we get to see how these different characters can kind of use them. And that also serves to give us another purpose that I don't think people talk about when we talk about tournament arcs. And that's the fact that since they're early on in the series, they're not hampered by power creep. We know how power creep kind of works, where it's like, okay, well, we have this one character, we have to make this character look trash to hype up another character, and it's just an overall cycle, right? Because tournament arcs are not as later on in the series, we don't have power creep. We basically have insane peak fights that come with a free power system tutorial. Another thing that I gotta have to note about tournament arcs overall is that they kind of have simple objectives. When you're looking at a tournament arc, like, the stakes aren't as high. There's no insane planet destroying cataclysmic event, at least most times. A tournament arc is just simply, for the most part, one-on-one fights. It's not a bunch of crazy things. You know what is a cataclysmic event? Not liking and subscribing, so don't make that mistake and hit the like button, subscribe, and share with your friends. But just overall, we're always gifted with one-on-one fights where the characters are allowed to lose, and because they're allowed to lose, we're always gifted to unique outcomes. I guess one thing that, you know, people might kind of note is that having lower stakes isn't inherently a great thing all the time. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. How is having less stakes in an arc a pro as opposed to a con? Let me let y'all in on a little secret. Manga are great, like, they're great at making stories, but sometimes they get a little overly ambitious with their arcs. That leads to the show sometimes having an overly complicated narrative, and honestly that leads to the ending of the arc kind of being a mess. If you want to use an example for this, I'm not gonna lie, you could use war arcs, because war arcs are great a lot of the time, but it's usually a mixed bag because sometimes they're not good. Tournament arcs don't suffer from that, you know what I'm saying? So, like,
wouldn't let that shit happen to me though.
just looking at tournament arcs, they're kind of a lot more streamlined. They do have their plot. They usually still push the plot and story along, but they pretty much give us only the information we need to know. Like, okay, we need to know about the power system. All right, cool. There you go. We need to know about this character. All right, here, this is the information you need. There is no fluff in these tournament arcs. And that honestly just allows, like I said, less issues with plot armor, and honestly just a bunch of fun outcomes and fun matchups. But speaking on the whole fun matchups, that's an underrated part of tournament arcs. Looking at all the tournament arcs we've kind of had, I'm actually kind of glad for the most part, for instance, with the Chunin Exams, we didn't get like Sasuke versus Neji or Naruto versus Sasuke, because honestly, that's probably too obvious and too predictable. Those are great fights, and obviously, like, those are fights we wanted to see. One thing that I liked about tournament arcs is that we got fights that we wouldn't have expected, like Shikamaru versus Tamari, Rock Lee versus Gaara, Shino versus Kankuro. Those fights are breaths of fresh air, because honestly, if we had to pick as an audience, we would not have wanted those fights. Because those aren't fights that we were expecting, when we get those matchups, the mangaka are basically forced to think outside the box, because now we're putting up these different skill sets against each other to see how the fight kind of plays out. The whole Rock Lee versus Gaara, like, no one before that fight happened, no one was calling that Rock Lee was gonna give Gaara the hands. Like, no one was thinking of that. No one knew who Rock Lee was. Staying along the lines with interesting matchups and things like that, tournament arcs always serve to kind of give us a great scope of the series and honestly of the characters in general. Usually mangakas use tournament arcs to kind of show these characters that we've never seen before and basically have them interact with already existing characters. Like we knew about Naruto and Sasuke back in the day, but when Rock Lee touched down, we were like, yo, who's this weak ass nigga? He's not hard. We don't know who he is. Until he came and dropped off Naruto and Sasuke. Since after that, we were looking at Rock Lee like, oh, this guy might be he might be that guy. You can look at Duelist Kingdom, which, you know what I'm saying, shout out Yu-Gi-Oh, that's the shit. Like Duelist Kingdom literally introduced us to an entire cast of new characters that became show staples. We have like Weevil Underwood, Rex Raptor, or My Valentine. Like even looking at like Pegasus or Bakura, we got two amazing villains that would shift the series for arcs to come. Or you can even look at Hunter x Hunter with Heaven's Arena. Heaven's Arena honestly put us onto Ahsoka as a character and kind of let us know about the Phantom Truth towards the end of it. Like we see when he fought Castro, we learn about the whole thing about spiders, which was kind of a taste of, okay, these are a bunch of top tier guys that we're gonna run into very, very soon. That's just kind of what the tournament arc usually does. Like we get a glimpse and we get insight on these crazy characters that are incoming. And I think it really helps open up the world building of all these series. Or honestly, staying on that fact, we can even look at Zushi and Wing. Basically, through them, we kind of learn about Nen, which is basically one of the best and most intricate power systems in anime, period. Shout out Zushi though, for real, because I ain't gonna lie, Sensei Wing, that nigga hoed him. Like, bro, he basically told him, like, yeah, you're nice, you're talented, you're 1 in 100,000, but those two niggas, they're 1 in 10 million, which I ain't gonna lie, I would have been heated. Honestly, staying on that path, like, tournament arcs, it's not always just insane characters like Hisoka or things like that. We get insight on the weak niggas too, and I do like that. Like, sometimes we need the weak niggas in the series. So, overall, tournament arcs just make the world building a lot better. And I think the best part of tournament arcs is seeing the new abilities and the results of their training. So the way that they're kind of set up, it kind of depends on how the creator wants to do it. The characters can either get naturally stronger through training in anticipation for the arcs, training in the arcs, or, you know, just basically training during the arcs or training during the fights. So those are the 3 ways it can kind of happen. But that leads to, honestly, that's the most fun aspect of the tournament arcs. Obviously, all anime fans know about, and we've talked about 1,000 times about how crazy Rock Lee went when he fought against Gaara. We know about that. I spoke earlier about Rock Lee going crazy against Gaara and Hisoka fighting Castro, but there's a bunch of other things. Like, we have Sasuke stealing Rock Lee's whole flow and giving Gaara his first ass whooping ever, or Gon getting his get back against Hisoka and smacking him right in his face. We have Yugi and Tim switching between each other, trying to beat Pegasus and using a new alteration of their ace monster, Magician of Black Chaos. Like, overall, tournament arcs, there's just so many good things they do for an anime. They serve so many purposes in such a simple and easy to follow package. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that tournament arcs are the best anime trope? Maybe you think it's war arcs or rescue arcs? Like, what do you think down below? Let me know what you think the best anime trope is. But that's all, so I'm out.